Welcome to Inspiring Possible. I'm Christy Pennison, former stuck person turned therapist and dream consultant. Are you feeling stuck, overwhelmed, uncertain, or just need a little inspiration? Then I want to help you gain the clarity, confidence, and courage to create possibilities and live a life you love. Because, folks, life's too short to be miserable.
Hello and welcome back, my inspiring people. I don't know what's happening for you in this world, but or right now in this place and time, but I know we are in the season of transition because for many of y'all, you might have had kids that went back to school, or you may be going back to school yourself, or there might be something happening in your life that you didn't expect, or you may even be in a season that you're like, I don't love this season so much. But I appreciate you taking the time to come back because, we always want to have inspiring conversations to help you reconsider and reimagine what's possible for your life. And so I appreciate you pulling back up and listening wherever you listen, whether it's on a walk or maybe you're driving somewhere, or maybe you're doing something fun, or maybe you're just trying to distract yourself from work. That could be it too, because we're going to talk a little bit about distraction today. So I'm glad you came. But if you feel like you are feeling more and more disconnected from yourself, maybe it's something that you felt was your purpose or something that you wanted to do at some point in your life. It could be relationships, and it could just be maybe even the work that you do on a day in and day out. Then I hope you stay tuned because I have an expert in the house that is not only an author, a speaker, but she's also a leadership expert who helps high achievers, which I know there are many of you listening right now, reclaim your attention and reconnect with what matters most. And I don't know about y'all, but I need this conversation in my life so many times. Like, if I could have it on repeat every week, I think it would help me just resettle onto what's most important. Because when we live in an age of so much distraction, it's hard to really zone in on what matters most and give the time and attention to those things, people, places, situations that we really want to give our undivided selves to. And so I'm really excited to welcome Dr. Michelle Machado to the show. She is just launched a book, Alive Again, 4 Steps to Reclaim Your Life in a Distracted World. So welcome to the show, Dr. Michelle.
Thank you so much, Christy, for having me here. It is such a pleasure and an honor.
Yeah, well, I'm so glad to talk about this because I feel like I have conversations with people all the time about just how distracted we are, especially with our devices. Like,
Mhm.
thankfully, I was in the generation, and I don't know what generation you were born in, but where I wasn't born with a cell phone. We weren't born with the internet. You know what I mean? Like, that wasn't a thing until I got like teenage, maybe late teenage, and then into college. But I
Yeah,
just find that distraction is such a big thing these days.
it absolutely is. I mean, it's everywhere. And, I speak about this in my book. And I define distraction, as anything that removes you from having that time and connection with yourself. Because if you're constantly filling your day with other people's opinions, with noise, with stimulation, then where do you have the time to actually sit with your own thoughts and kind of listen to the thing we all have, which is our intuition, right? And so for me, I look at distraction from, yes, social media and technology is a huge distraction. I mean, now we look at our kids. I feel like sometimes they walk to schools with TVs in their pockets, right? Because they can access the internet at any given point in time, let alone adults too. And then you look at the second distraction, which is entertainment. Because if you look back to the days where you would watch a show and then you'd have to wait 1 week to watch the next episode.
I know, and I would be, like, still on pins and needle, and they started doing this a little bit, House of Dragon just came out,
Yeah.
and they're like, "No, not until next week is the
Next week.
next one coming out," and I'm like, "Are you kidding me? I've gotten so used to binge watching, why are you making me wait?" But I do wait, and then I'm ready to watch
Which is
it. Okay,
great.
but yeah, entertainment.
Which is great because when you have shows that you can access at your fingertips, and it's like you don't even have to decide that you're going to watch the next episode. It's autoplay already takes you to the next episode. You're losing that ability to develop that patience, right? There's that instant
Mhm.
there, and that has huge implications for how your brain develops. Um, the third distraction I talk about is work. I think many of us can relate to that because we find ourselves immersed in a day-to-day stream of to-do list at work. We don't have a 9 to 5. Majority of us don't have 9 to 5 because you can, either if you're in a physical office or whether you're work from home, even if you step out and you're back into your family space, you still have a device where work people can access you, right? Through a message, through an email, a notification that pops up, and automatically you're brought back into work. And I often see that as a distraction if you don't have firm boundaries for yourself. And yes, there are pressures depending on the roles you play and the seniority of the roles. There are pressures that you have to fulfill, and I get that. But at what cost? A mentor a mentor once said to me, if you don't have boundaries, then who's going to respect them? And I think that's such an important thing because we often feel the need to respond to that email right away, to tackle that issue right away. And if you're in the middle of dinner with your family, or if you've decided that this is your me time and all of a sudden it's been, immersed with work stress, well, there goes the calmness that you were feeling a few minutes ago, and now your nervous system is in overdrive. And so I see that as a form of distraction because it removes you from your ability to really connect with who you are and connect for that, the calmness that your nervous system needs to find yourself in. And the fourth distraction that I often talk about is news. Now, the reason I talk about news is it's not just found on news channels on TV, it's on social media, like depending on what platform you use. And if you are being stimulated by drama, and if you look at what news is, sometimes it's fear mongering, right? Because we often see the bad stuff that's happening. Very rarely do you see the good stuff that gets reported. And so if a person is addicted to the news, then they're wiring their nervous system in such a way that they are constantly being stimulated in a negative way to be in, a state of fight or flight, constantly like reacting. And that doesn't do so well for people down the road. So I often use these as distractions because the opportunity to sit with yourself, to be in the quiet, to be in the knowing without any sort of external stimulation is an uncomfortable place to be for us today. Maybe not 40 years ago when we didn't have technology, but today it's really hard. And that is where you get the most incredible ideas. That is where you can really connect to ask yourself the deeper questions of who you are, why you're here, who you're called to serve, what your purpose is. And those are questions we don't often ask ourselves because we don't sit with ourselves long enough to have those internal conversations. We're always masking it with some sort of distraction, of which those 4 types are the primary ones.
Well, and I don't know about you, but I don't even think sometimes people are aware that they're masking. Like literally, I will go in and not even realize that I'm avoiding what, like you said, is uncomfortable. And I used to work with a therapist that was on our team, and she would she would tell me, she's like, Christy, I'm giving people these exercises to just go sit with themselves. They can be in the car,
Yeah.
they can be in their office, they can be somewhere. And she's like, and just not have a device,
Mm-hmm.
just sit in silence, no music. I just want you to sit for 5 minutes. And she would tell me pretty much people would come back and a lot of them just couldn't do it. Could
Yes.
not do it. Could not do it for 5 minutes. Then she like, okay, just keep on trying, go
Yeah.
back again. So I am curious because I do think this has become, even for me, when I try to do the practice of settling and sitting with myself, I have to really kind of push myself to
Mhm.
stay in it because if not, it's like habitual now. And so I'm curious about the neuroscience about this. For me to pick up my phone, or I have to leave the phone in a different room if I'm doing some self-reflection time. And so what are some tips or tricks for people to like help them
Yeah.
understand when they are masking stuff by just jumping into these distractions and they don't even realize it? And then how to learn to sit with themselves and how to get through it when it's initially uncomfortable.
Yeah, I mean, those are great questions. And there is definitely a neurological explanation to that, right? If you look at neuroscience, we have what's called Hebb's law, which is nerve cells in our brain that fire together, wire together. So if you are having a consistent set of repetitive actions over days, weeks, months, and years, those actions linked to a particular behavior get wired in your brain so strongly that they become automatic. So you don't even have to think about it. So if I look at an analogy, think about when you are driving a car. I mean, when you first started driving a car, you were very nervous, anxious. So you get into the car and get the gear into reverse and drive and whatever it is, and you're checking your blind spots and you're like taking every single amount of time to be able to switch lanes because you want to be super cautious. Your brain is processing all of that information. But now, when you drive the car every single day, over a week, it gets a little bit easier. Over a month, even easier. And over years, sometimes you're driving in a car and you're like, I reached here, but I don't remember the journey because your mind just wandered off. Because essentially, your unconscious mind just took over and started driving because nerve cells that fired together, wired together. Those same actions and behaviors have become solidified in the brain. And so to be able to, it's the same thing with our devices and technology now. We've been living with technology since when did the iPhone come out? 2007, I think. So it's like 20 years almost, right? And so we've been
Wild.
a long time. And so imagine over 20 years, we have had this device in our pockets, at our bedside table, at our dinner table, and we're constantly looking at it. Then when social media comes into the mix, it's even more exacerbated. You've got the algorithms there that are always triggering you to pick up the device and get on their platforms. So over time, those actions have wired itself into the brain such that now it's automatic. So when you're in an elevator or you're in a grocery line, well, what do? While you're waiting, you pick up your phone and you look at your phone because you can't just sit and just wait. You can't do anything else.
Mhm.
Automatic pattern. So I often say the first thing to change, the first step to change is awareness because you cannot change what you cannot see. And majority of us don't realize this is an automatic. It's this autopilot. This is just behavior on overdrive. And so if you start to understand how the brain works, and this is what I teach as part of a workshop I do for clients, you know, change your mind. And this is a certified program by Dr. Joe Dispenza, is change your mind and create new results. Learn the patterns of behavior that have kept you stuck, that have kept you where you are, and learn how to unlearn those patterns and how to create new forms of behavior, because that is the first step to change, that awareness piece. And so when you do have that awareness, it doesn't mean that it's going to be a quick switch and now everything's going to be fine and dandy and you're not going to pick up your phone. You've got to make the persistent choice that the next time I want to reach for my phone, I'm not going to, or I'm going to keep it into the other room. And often the brain is wired in such a way that every time you start to do something that is different, that is outside of what is comfortable, it's going to try to pull you back because the brain's been conditioned to be in a state of comfort, right? The brain, through evolution, it wants to keep us comfortable, to keep us safe. Anything that takes us outside of that zone, well, there's fear. That's where it's like, no, 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 what are you doing? And so again, being aware and recognizing that that's what the body's trying to get you to do, stop, pause, and make the consistent choice that you're not going to do it. And that's why it's so hard, because it's like an addiction, right? And then you
It
take
is
something away,
100%. It's an addiction.
and you take something away that you're addicted to, you have withdrawal symptoms. But the first part, the first initial period of of the withdrawal symptoms is really, really hard. But if you can overcome that and be persistent and consistent, you can start to slowly change your behavior. And I think the challenge with a lot of people is we want to make this change and we start down the process. Like, look at, if we want to get healthy and you want to start this new diet and all of those things, we start. And then something happens in our day or in our life that kind of shifts us and we revert back to the comfort, to what it is. And then we're like, oh, it's too hard. I give up. I can't do this.
Mhm.
And so change never happens. So until you start to learn the patterns of behavior that are wired in your brain and know that actually, because they've been wired, they can also be unwired, but it's going to take a lot of energy and focus and action to do it, then you are able to change. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, but you're like you said, it's just, I guess, part of that awareness of realizing that this is a pattern anyways. And I can even think about some of my family members, we've talked about this because I have one in particular, and this is no shade to nobody because I do the same thing sometimes. But when the reels started coming on the social,
Mm.
oof,
Oh,
there
yeah.
was a whole, and I know that they did all the brain science around it to kind of keep people locked. But then all of a sudden I get reels all throughout the day. Now, right now, as we're speaking, I have no clue where my phone is. I think I actually left it in my car several hours ago, which is,
Good.
doesn't mean that I'm not wired to it because my brain senses that it's not in the area and
Yeah.
it's so used to it being like an appendage on my body
Yeah. Yeah.
that it's like, "Ugh." But how do you help people become aware of how distracted we really are? I guess that's a question that comes to my mind because I don't even always realize that how distracted I probably am on most days, you know? Is there a way to help increase that awareness, or we just gotta start paying attention, or
No, it's hard, and I would say first go buy my book because I walk through
Yes, go by the book.
I walk through all aspects of this question within that book. For me, I didn't realize how distracted I was. I didn't realize how lost I was until one day, being a high achieving mom, I'm a mom of two young girls, and we were living in the UK prior to, I've lived all around the world. And so during COVID, I moved back to Canada and I had started a new role altogether, managing a team I had never met in person. And it was a stressful job because it was a new industry in some sense, and I had to really learn the role, learn the people. And I had two young kids. My youngest was 1 year old. My oldest was 4 in online school. The schedules of
Oh,
my
wow.
yeah, and so managing online school, managing a team, managing my 1 year old whose sleep schedule and feed schedule just went out the door when we moved and just wanted to be attached to me, it was a lot. And dare I say, I was also doing my MBA remotely at the time. And so
Okay.
there was so much going on. And so I remember this moment where my daughter, those are the days where online work, where you're trying to get work done and then you're going to go down and feed the kids and put them to bed. And then you're going to get back into work because that's the nature of
That
what,
was the Twilight Zone. I just
what,
call it Twilight Zone, and it
yeah,
sounds like for you, really Twilight Zone.
really Twilight Zone. And I remember my eldest daughter, like in the room, she would hover. She's like, Mommy, are you done yet? And I'm like, 5 more minutes, honey. 5 more minutes. Just one more email, just one more thing. And I think she did that about 3 or 4 times. And, by the 4th time, I could also feel myself getting annoyed because I'm like, doesn't she understand? Mommy has like important things to do. She keeps coming. I mean, this is what I was thinking, but I could sense her disappointment. And she comes to me at one point, Christy, and she says to me, she's like, Mommy, did you even want to have children? Because I feel
Oh,
like
my
I'm
mommy heart. Was that like a stab?
that was my heart broke. I mean,
Mhm.
and I talk about this so openly in the book. And, I'm not a perfect parent. I'm not a perfect person. So
No,
me,
me neither, girl. Me neither. Yeah.
so me even just, sharing what I am sharing right now, it's all come from lived experience, painful experiences that I don't want, the audience listening in to sort of go through. But she said, I feel like I'm a distraction, Mummy. Like, did you want to have kids? And I said, "What how have I been showing up that this girl that I prayed for that was my miracle baby because we were told we couldn't have kids is now questioning her existence." And for me that was so eye-opening that I had to stop and look at where was I spending my time and where was my attention going. And I realized, and I speak really openly about this in the book, that, when I was done with work, I'd go downstairs and get them dinner, but then I'm on my phone and I'm looking at LinkedIn and then and then I go to Instagram and then I go to the news and I'm like, here, watch some TV while I get dinner ready. And then we're sitting at the dinner table, but they want to watch TV and I want to just get some things done. So it's all this multitasking you're trying to do. And being a parent is really hard. But when you're also in the senior roles in work and you're trying to juggle everything, it just adds layers of responsibility that
And
you
then you're in school yourself, too.
and I'm in school myself, and
Yeah.
so it was exhausting. But that's where I really had to stop. And so I don't want people to get to that stage, that low point in their life or a really hard point in their life where their family is questioning their existence. And so that's why it really prompted me I need to share this. As painful as it is, and maybe as horrific as it sounds like I'm a terrible mom, I want to share this because so many of us are being pulled in so many directions that we don't realize that we're not present with the people in front of us. And I think
Yeah.
one thing, I speak about this in my TEDx talk last year, and I said the one skill AI cannot replace is human connection. And I define that as three layers. But the first core layer is connection to self. Because if you are not connected to yourself, to the intentionality behind what you are doing and why you're doing it, then how do you pour into connection to others and connection to your purpose? And so I really had to dig deep within that to be able to arrive at some painful conclusions that I didn't, I wasn't ready to hear, but I had to. And that's when I started to go down a long journey. It wasn't overnight. I won't say that the next day I was all present and everything was perfect. There were months, and I think over a period of years that I have shifted entirely what my approach is to my family and to myself.
Yeah. Well, and you know what? It's interesting as you were sharing your story. I was actually thinking about a time with my own daughter when now this was not in COVID era, and but it was pretty much just me and her for her whole life. So I was a single mom. And so a lot of times I would be working on things at home if it drained into like stuff that I needed to do at home that I weren't able to finish up at work. And I had her there. And I'll never forget, and don't get me wrong, I've probably ebbed and flowed from this presence to non-presence to making the decision to hearing the hard thing to then going back into behaviors like, trust me,
Yeah.
not perfect over here in the least, and
Yeah.
probably super passionate about my work, so often distracted
Yes.
from the fact that, yes, there is a human being that is relying on me that I hope to bring into the world. And she's looking to me
Yeah.
for that safety, security, and presence as she's developing. But I'll never forget, she was probably around the same age. I don't know about your daughter because she was about 4 when this happened. She
Yeah.
was probably around 3-ish, 3 or 4 maybe. And I'll never forget, I was working on some stuff in the living room on my laptop, and she came up to me at 3 years old, and I kid you not, she put her hand on my computer and she said, "Mommy, what you doing? Paperwork?" Like, I guess I had repeated it so many times that I'm doing this paperwork
Yeah.
that I'll never forget, and it's making me even emotional as I think about it, like, that I was like, "Oh my gosh, I've got to get out of this job. I've
Yeah.
got to get out of this job," because it, like, would drain me. I'd drive for hours a day to get to these places.
Yeah.
Anyways, and that was a pivotal point. But you know what? I will say that when I made the pivot and finally fully understood what she was trying to say, that next 2 years, I mean, it wasn't as lucrative of a job. Like, the financial gain was not as much as the other job, but it was 2 years of peace, I remember, in presence,
Yeah.
before I transitioned to something else that then probably pushed me right back into where I escaped from. But and so that's just to share with listeners too, like, I think it's a constant, maybe you can speak to this, like a constant recentering
Yeah.
on what it is, because distraction just creeps up, and then sometimes what we're focused on just shifts over different seasons, and it's so easy to fall back into the distracted and disconnected trap.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, at the end of it, we're human beings, so we're always going to be prone to be attracted to things that are enticing. And the marketing world, the media world knows very well how to pull people's attention towards certain platforms or products. And so I think we have to be very mindful of that, but also very forgiving of ourselves, and we need to give ourselves grace. I think, like you said, we all go through different seasons of life. And sometimes in those seasons, certain things will require more of you than others. Certain people will require more of you than others. And so I think we have to be graceful to understand what that need is and allow ourselves to be okay with having to shift perspectives there. So, when my kids were young, yes, I was, maternity leave. And so they got they got all of me. But then as I was pivoting back into work and then obviously taking on this educational degree, uh, you know, I had to pour more of myself into that. And so it was just allowing myself to find, I'm not going to use the word balance because I don't think there's ever a balance. I don't think there's ever work-life balance. I think there's
Yeah, I wish
seasons.
there was. I think they sold us a myth back in the day when they were really pushing this work-life balance
Yes.
situation thing. I'm like, "Y'all
Yes.
lying. There ain't no balance. There might be counterbalance, but there ain't no balance."
There is no balance. I think you have to decide where you are needed the most in what season and decide how you're going to manage your life around it. Now, that takes again energy and effort and obviously being able to organize your life to make that flow. But I think when it comes to distractions, I'm also a faith led person. And, for me, I believe that each of us here has kind of a calling, a purpose. And I see distraction as sort of a way to remove people from that purpose, from discovering that purpose.
Ooh,
I,
yeah.
that's exactly what I see it as. And again, this is not something that just came to me, you know, um, all of a sudden. Over time, through my own practices, it was sort of like an epiphany that what if the distractions we have in our world are really to keep people from discovering who they are and what were they born to do? Because if you are, it's like taking a kid to toy store and it's like you can have all the toys you want, right? And imagine a child, like how would they react? They're not going to be like, oh, come here and let's study this. Oh, honey, why don't you go and do that? And
No,
they're
I
like, no,
get
no,
the
no.
buggy.
Yeah,
If you ask me right now, okay, I'd be like, "Let me get the buggy." If you're like, "Christy, like, let's bring me to, like, TJ Maxx or something like that," right? Like,
yeah,
you get whatever you want that you can fit into this buggy. Honey,
exa-
I'd be running through that store, that buggy would be overflowing.
exactly.
So the same as a kid, right? I'm not like if they're like, I'm not studying things. I'm just like, "That looks good, put it in the buggy. That looks good."
Yeah. Exactly. And so I think the distractions work very well like that because we don't have to stop to pause to feel anything because we can keep ourselves distracted with something in our life. And so we often, you ask people, "How are you?" "Good, I'm busy." "Good, I'm busy." And it's like busy has become like the a badge of honor that we wear, right? If you're busy, then you're worthy enough, then you are successful enough, then you are like you've got things going for you. And so I feel like that becomes a distraction because people are never able to find time to connect and sit and stay grounded in who they are so that they are more kind of giving of their time and more intentional of who they are and how they should, how they want to show up in this world.
Yeah, I really liked how you said, pulled from purpose, because I would say that I align with that same belief system. Like, I do believe, from a faith-based perspective that we all are
Yeah.
giving, some type of purpose. I think it takes a minute but if we're not connected with ourselves or even to our higher power,
Yeah.
it's hard for us to discover even what that is to be, and I think it's a real tragedy that some people will go through this life
Yeah.
missing out on truly being able to walk in what they were intended
Born.
to be able to give, and I even think about my own life. Sometimes I think about where am I allowing myself to be distracted
Yeah.
with things or things that are, like you said, just they're what did you call it? Wired and what is it? Hired and wired? What is it together?
It's nerve cells that fire together, wire together.
Yeah.
It's neuroplasticity.
Fired and
Yes.
wired, yeah.
Yes. So nerve cells. So every time you take a certain behavior, your nerve cells are firing, right? They're sending electrical kind of activity through your nerves through the neuron. And so it's then resulting in a certain behavior. And so we say nerve cells that fire together, wire together. So you do that particular activity every single time. It's just solidifying the behavior. So it becomes automatic.
Yeah. How did whenever you had that, encounter with your daughter, what were some things that I know you said it didn't change overnight, but I'm curious for those listening, what were some practical things that you were able to do that allowed you to become more connected,
Yeah.
to yourself, people, things like
And I
that, so
think,
you got more aligned?
I
Yeah.
mean, I had obviously had a conversation and I profusely apologize, but that's not I mean, for a kid, they have a heart of gold and they'll always be forgiving. But I think it's, what we model is what our children mirror. So I had to get very intentional about how I was showing up with my girls. And so trying not to rush through, dinners with them or bedtime routines with them and really giving them full presence. And that means your device is not in the room with you, right? Like there, because when the device is there, even if it's there, it's still a distraction because at some point you're going to pick up and glance at it while they're, I don't know, running to get changed or, whatever it is. And so becoming really intentional and trying to be more mindful of how I was showing up with them. But the practice that I developed over time that didn't come the next day, through my own sort of learnings, and I'm a medical educator by training. So I've taught in medical schools all over the world and just understanding how the brain and body works helped me understand that we wake up in the morning and the first thing we do is we pick up that phone and we check our messages and check our social media and, emails and whatnot, our to-do list. And before you've even stepped out of bed, your nervous system is already on fire, depending on what your day looks like, right? Depending if something has happened overnight. And so for me now, I don't look at my phone. Obviously, I have an alarm. Once the alarm goes off, I freshen up, I go downstairs, and I usually wake up before everybody else in the house wakes up. Sometimes that's 30 minutes, sometimes that's 2 hours. It just depends on how I'm feeling. I'm well rested, and I will have time to pour into myself. And that usually looks like prayer, scripture, meditation, because when I do that, when I engage in that morning practice, the question of who am I going to be today? How am I going to show up today? I am very grounded. So then when I go to wake up my girls, they get all of me. They get a whole me. They get a happy me, a peaceful me. And that just shifts the trajectory of how the day starts and the day unfolds. And you can imagine when you're getting kids ready for school and it's like, everyone's like running and, I don't want to wear this clothes. I want to wear that clothes. If you can stay grounded in all of that, if you're not yelling at your kids to get out the door because they're already late or they're missing the bus, then imagine the ripple effect it has on them and their day. And so that is a morning practice I have done. So it didn't start right away when that conversation with my daughter happened. But what did happen afterwards is intentionality in how I was showing up, especially with my work and with the devices. Very intentional there. And then over time, ensuring that I have a morning practice I build into my routine so that it just ripples out in terms of how I show up during the day. Even when I have a super busy day, lots going on, stressful events, anything that typically happens, I'm able to respond more with grace and empathy as opposed to reactivity, which I think so many of us find ourselves in today.
Yeah, I love that you highlight the morning, what your morning and your day starts off like. Because I know for me, and I ebb and flow in my consistency of some of my practices as well, right? Depending on what's going on in the world and what's happening. But the more I can stay consistent with allowing myself space in the morning and that space to sit outside, to journal, to drink my cup of coffee. Sometimes it's even to do a chore, I'll be honest with you, because I have no energy by the end of the day. So it
Yeah,
could be like,
of course.
it could be some mindfulness chores with no distraction. And I'm with you. I'll sometimes still pull the phone, but I've tried to do the habit of leave the phone after the clock
Yeah,
goes off because it's on the phone, leave it in the room,
yeah,
and then I just go and do my stuff. And so it's crazy because I have somebody that calls me every morning. And at first they were frustrated because they're like, why aren't you answering? And I'm like, because I've literally left my phone in a whole different room.
yeah,
I would love to start the day having a conversation with you after I finish my,
yeah, yeah,
period of time, where I'm just not, like you said, distracted. I'm just completely mindful in my space,
yeah,
whether it be taking the dogs out or whether it be sitting somewhere or being not feel rushed. And the days that I do my prayer, the journaling, some reflection, I
yeah,
mean, those days always go better. And I always know, I don't know about you, but like I can get to the end of the week and if I hadn't done that at all, or I've not been practicing it
yeah,
consistently, then I can tell I'm not the best version of myself. I'm normally super reactive at
yeah,
work. If there's something that goes down, I'm like, what? Versus like allow myself to have the space before
yeah.
I jump to react. So I don't know if you're the same, but
100%. And you know what? It's not just me who notices it, my kids notice it. So, I talk about this in the book where I think it was one day I didn't actually do my morning practice because I was tired. I didn't wake up, I snoozed. And we also had a lot going on in our family. My father in law was really ill. My husband was overseas with him, and we were very worried about his health. And unfortunately, he passed away a few weeks later. But there was
sorry to
this,
hear that.
thank you. And, there was this looming sort of worry and anxiety that I had in my brain. And so waking up already with those worries, worry for my husband, worry for my father in law, and then not doing my morning practice, and then being a weekend with my two girls who are then watching cartoons, and then there's cereal on the floor, and then there's like, mummy, 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 mummy is like tailing me everywhere. I lost it at some point. And again, this is what happens, right? Stress builds up in your body. It's like a little kettle. It's like the pressure is building up until one point you like explode. For me, explosion was, I was just like very temperamental with them. I was like reacting all the time and I wasn't pleased with myself. So by the end of the night, I realized, and I had my girls saying to me, Mummy, you're very upset today. You didn't do your meditation, did you? Like my girls notice this because they know every morning without like for most of the
They're your accountability buddies, it
they're
sounds
my
like.
accountability because they know, they see me. Even on a weekend, I will wake up before they do. And I'm sitting on my couch and my eyes are closed. I'm in my meditation or I'm doing my prayers and they will never come to disturb me. Or even if they do come, they'll sit quietly beside me. And so they knew that day I hadn't. And they're holding me accountable now. And I realized and I apologized profusely. And I said, I'm really sorry. This is what's been happening. And mommy's just a little bit worried. And I think, as parents, we're always going to have moments where we falter, right? We're human beings. We're not perfect. There's
Yeah.
no perfect parent out there. So I think it's giving ourselves grace to know that there's no parenting manual that comes
No,
when
there's not.
we're
I've been looking at for mine for 17 years, girl. I'm like, "When is it gonna fall down from the sky? Someone
right.
please tell me."
Exactly. And so we're figuring it out and we're going to make mistakes. But I think the importance of making mistakes is the repair. And there's a lot of science to this. It's called the rupture and the repair, right? The repair is so important for children to repair the relationship before you go to bed or however, whenever it's possible, because that repair just also teaches them, how to build that communication and build relationships and nurture relationships and be forgiving of not just yourself, of one another. And so, we had a great conversation and the night we hugged it out, we kissed each other, went to bed. And the next morning, I am not missing up so I had multiple alarms and I'm like, I am not missing my morning routine. So absolutely, like similar to what you said,
Yeah.
you see the difference. You see the difference in yourself and how you show up when you are operating from a grounded state versus a state of like fight or flight, and your nervous system is constantly reacting to the things around you. And we see it on social media all the time. I mean, you pull up post and you can
All the
see
time.
someone either saying something or being vulnerable, and then you have all these disparaging comments that come alongside it, and we're losing the empathy in our society today because it's so easy to comment and not have accountability, right? And so I think just owning that for yourself and realizing how do I want to show up in this world? You know,
Yeah.
how
It
do I
it
want
really is incredible. Even earlier today, I got a response from an email that I was like I was so thrown off by it, but I'm like, this person I could tell was in a very agitated state, and it was really a simple thing,
yeah,
but you could tell that it was agitated because they wrote in all capitals, like,
yes, yes,
"Do this, da da da
yeah,
da," and I was like, "Oh." But
yeah,
then I just reminded myself, I wonder what perspective this person's coming from, but I even know for me, when
yeah.
I'm sometimes on social media, if I scroll, I don't know if this has happened to you, but, like, I will get either anxious, upset, and I've
Mhm.
started to try to give myself some understanding of what's happening, and then I'll just have to sit and I'll be like, "Wait, what did I see, or what did I just glance at or read
Yeah,
that had this reaction?" But I think that there's such most people don't even know. They're going through and I don't even know sometimes because 'cause I'm like, there was something I read that really just threw me over
yeah,
the edge, you know what I mean?
yeah, yeah,
But I have to take some time to really reflect, and then I have to tell myself, "Okay, I may need to push if I when I do go into social media, I might need to curate my feed a little bit better so I'm not seeing some of these things that really can put me in a negative or anxious place
yeah,
pretty quickly because
yeah,
I guess my brain is just trying to protect me and say, "Ooh, something's wrong here."
yeah.
But is there any kind of practices that you just would say to just help people? I guess it's realizing what's going on and putting some boundaries around some of that stuff, but
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I agree. I've experienced the same thing with social media. And, for the longest time, I've stayed away from Instagram because I'm like, I'm not going on Instagram. I can't do the doom scroll. But, as part of like building my brand, I have to get on Instagram, building awareness about the book. And so I've been very intentional. I will go on the platform just to obviously post and like, to engage with a few people in my network. But it's about curating your network. I always say social media is a comparison trap. And it's
mm.
so harmful, not just for adults, but imagine the young kids that are exposed to this.
Oh, it's terrible. From a therapist
It
perspective, I
is
could deep dive into it. So I can't even know. I'm not even sure what the rupture is going to be for a long term when you talk about rupture and repair. But I can even see in my own daughter, and it's a part of life. Like that's how they connect. But
yeah,
the comparison is just, it
it is.
really can
It
weigh
is.
on our kids' mental health.
100%. And I've seen this as a medical educator, looking at the rise in mental health in university students across the board, starting back in 2015 when I was in Australia, you started to see the shift. And I think Jonathan Haidt speaks about this in his book, The Anxious Generation, marked by a rise in social media. But, back to your question around What are some of the things you do? I always say you are what you consume, right? And if you think about if you're a very healthy person, like if you're very focused on the foods you consume and your diet and your exercise, you're very particular about what you're putting into your body, right? You're not eating the junk food. You're going all veggies and protein and all of that. And great. And you're in the best shape of your life because you're eating healthy. But what are you consuming? What's going into your mind? Are you having the same practice for what you are feeding your mind? Because everything you are consuming is being absorbed by your brain cells. And again, nerve cells that fire together, wire together. So when we are on social media and we are scrolling and we are going against content that triggers a lot of anxiety and a lot of fear and anger, it's either, what is the content you're consuming? And some of that comes back to the comparison because we're looking at people who look like they have it all together, who look like they have this glamorous life, who look like they're millionaires and multimillionaires, and you are poor and you don't have you're struggling. And that triggers comparison and that triggers anxiety. And now your nervous system is wired up and you feel worse than you did when you went on the platform. And so I have what I call, an audit in my book that I talk about of really getting very intentional and becoming very aware of where your attention is going every single day, how much time you're spending on these platforms, and being very aware of what you are consuming. Like what content, how are you curating your feed? Who are the people you want to follow? So if there's someone that, you follow and is like, I'm not really learning anything here. I'm not gaining anything of value here. Unfollow them. It's as easy as that. But I think you have to get very intentional to make those choices because there's so much of research around this. And I think for young kids as well, I was just showing my girls, my oldest is 10 and obviously she doesn't have social media, but she asked me, she's like, Mommy, when can I get on Instagram? And I'm like, honey, not till you're 16, but it's
And
not
there's a
just,
lot of social pressure even from kids that age, that
it
kids
is.
that have access to it, and then they're wanting their friends and yeah.
Yes.
I mean, we could have a whole nother podcast
We
episode on
can,
that topic, but yeah.
100%. So I will pause there, but I think for me, it's just having that conversation with my daughter and explaining to her. I said, honey, the damage on your brain, and I show her actually a video from research that has been done on kids with screen time and what is the impact on their brain. And I said, do you want that to happen to you? Is that what you want for yourself? Because if that's what you want, then by all means, go ahead. But if not, then please hear me. I'm not here. My job as a parent is to protect you. I'm not giving you a drug for you to access because that's essentially what social media is. It's a drug and research has proven it. It's like heroin. I'm not giving you a drug and saying have all access to it. I think as parents, we have
Mhm.
responsibility, but of course there's peer pressure and social pressure. So how do we navigate it, right? That's a whole other conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, but we will I do need to have somebody either you or somebody else back on about that because I think it's a big thing and it's just gonna continue to be a thing, and so
It
it's
is.
how do we educate people
Yes.
on how they can navigate this thing with their kids that's not always
Yes.
easy, so well, look, I know that I've taken away a lot of nuggets from our conversation today, but if people are like, "Man, I need to go get this book," because I think by the time this will release, the book will be available,
Yes.
all the places.
Yes.
So maybe you can tell where people can either connect with you or grab the book alive again, 4 Steps to Reclaim Your Life in a Distracted World.
Yeah. So you can grab it from any of my social platforms, Dr. Michelle Machado on Instagram and LinkedIn. You can grab it from Amazon.com. I'll make sure that you have all of the links to the show notes here. And feel free to follow me. You'll get access to free audits, and I'd be happy to connect and support you any which way I can.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll make sure that's all linked up so that you can grab your copy. I know I'm going to have to get a copy too so that I can just be, again, more aware. And sometimes more awareness comes by just reading
Yes.
how it's impacting you and what are the ways we are distracted that we don't even realize so that we can make those intentional changes in our life so that we can be able to be present for those, not only ourselves, but others that in our life that we really love. And then again, for our purpose as well. So I have one final question, Michelle, that I'd love to ask you. And that is, if you could go back and give a piece of advice or word of encouragement to younger you, and it could have been new mommy you or a different phase of life you
Mhm.
that you think you would really would want to give to younger version of you, is there something that you'd like to go back and tell yourself?
That I am worthy. I think so much as a young kid growing up, you're trying to prove your worthiness by achieving. And I think that's what I was trying to do for a long time. And I speak about this in the book. And, my identity was rooted in a lot of things that I absorbed through my upbringing. And so just reminding you that you are worthy no matter what, just because you exist. And your
Yeah.
purpose in this life is to kind of be who you are authentically and figure out what your gifts are and thrive in that purpose so that you can serve in a greater way. So worthiness comes from within, and it's what I tell my daughter now. It's not through
Yeah.
achievement or success or what we think is success. It comes from within, and you can only access that when you're fully connected to yourself.
Yeah. Well, look, I just want to acknowledge and appreciate you because that's something I think we can all take a chance to remember today. But I want to acknowledge you for, going through your own experience, your own lived experience, but, not stopping there. I always, love our guests that really take the time to say, like, how can I continue to impact the world around me? Help people normalize that this distraction thing is a real thing, but how can we realign with who we're meant to be and realign with ourselves and our greater purpose? So I just want to acknowledge you and appreciate you for coming alive yourself and then again
Yes,
and then helping other people discover how to do that. So I appreciate you coming on the show and giving up your time and all of your wisdom today.
I'm so honored and so grateful to be here, Christy. Thank you so much for having me. And I hope your audience enjoys this. And I'd be happy to be back in the future to have that conversation.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, we will. We will. Yeah. Well, I know I enjoyed it. And so if you are listening, I always like to give a takeaway that I'm taking away and encourage you to think about this as well. But number one, go get the book. Number two, maybe practice a little bit of awareness today of where am I feeling like I'm distracted in life and not being present. But also, I just want you to challenge you where in life may I be distracted from my purpose? Because I really do believe, just like Dr. Michelle shared, is that you have a purpose on this planet that rotates around the sun, that somehow we don't fall off the big ball. I don't know how it happens, but it just does. And so whatever you're feeling called to or you feel like it's on your heart to maybe explore, I just encourage you to take a step towards that. Until next time.
That's all for today on Inspiring Possible. If you found a little inspiration today, please go on over to iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you tune in to listen to leave us a comment and rate us. Also, make sure and link up with me at inspiringpossible.com to get the free Dream It, Write It, Do It workbook. And don't forget to follow us on social media and share this with anyone who needs to be inspired. Remember, if you can believe it, it's possible.